And we're off. Wes Streeting has resigned, Angela Rayner's tax case has been resolved, and Andy Burnham has finally found an MP who will step aside for him.
And yet, there is no vacancy in the leadership of the Labour Party. The Prime Minister is staying put. I'm Helen MacNamara, the former Deputy Cabinet Secretary.
And I'm Cleo Watson, a former Number 10 Special Advisor and veteran of 2 failed leadership campaigns. And this is In the Room.
So, Cleo, since we recorded on Tuesday, all of those days ago, we've had the King's speech, Keir Starmer telling everyone who's listening that he is absolutely staying put, there is no vacancy, but a number of his ministers have resigned, and then yesterday, after much speculation, Wes Streeting himself resigned. He wrote a very long, quite polite, but also quite damning letter to the Prime Minister and got a quite long, polite and quite damning letter back. And we're very much at stalemate as far as Wes Streeting is concerned for now.
Yeah, exactly. So whilst the Prime Minister is a sitting duck, essentially, other people are on manoeuvres. We're going to talk about Wes Streeting in a moment, but I want to start with Angela Rayner because at 6 o'clock yesterday morning, there was this announcement that Angela Rayner's tax issues with HMRC had been resolved. And for those who have forgotten, this is the reason she had to resign as Deputy Prime Minister back in September. She has now paid the £40,000 stamp duty tax to HMRC, which she had not done when she bought a new house. And she's essentially been exonerated, at least that's how she's put it, for not deliberately or carelessly avoiding the tax. And there's still a bit of a question, essentially, on why she wasn't fined, why she didn't pay it at all to begin with. But for now, she'll be pleased to have a line drawn under that. I was having a chat with Luke Trill from More in Common this morning, who's one of our pollsters of choice, because one of the things I was quite interested in is how damaging the tax affairs have actually been for Angela Rayner. Certainly with the wider public and with the Labour Party itself. And it has been this dark cloud hanging over her for the last, whatever it's been, 8 months. And it's a kind of an amazing day for it all to have come to an end as well, just as things are really kicking off. And I asked him, you know, when this comes up in focus groups, what do people make of the tax stuff? And he basically said, the public do think that, quote, they should know better, particularly because she was in charge of the housing department at the time, so you'd think she'd have got this one right. And it's really hard to get a second look in, even when it's an innocent mistake like this. You know, we'll have to see with Nigel Farage's £5 million donation if that's the same thing. That said, after her initial council tax stuff, actually quite a lot of people were saying it's just because she's a working class woman, and actually there was some kind of getting down in the trenches and defending her. So it would be quite interesting to see whether people end up being quite sympathetic towards her, whether she really has been exonerated, or she actually was in a position to have known what she was doing. I think the bit that is most important coming from Luke was this timing issue. It's just quite hard to repair that shine for the people who feel like it's come off her over the tax stuff. And if this had, say, been made clear in January that she was off the hook, she'd have had all this time to kind of build bridges and renew her reputation. It's quite hard, even by the standards of what will probably be quite a lengthy leadership contest, that's not a very long time to help people understand what actually happened and to say, actually, I'm innocent. So that's Ange for now. She's going to have to take readings over the weekend, decide what she wants to do. But you just referenced his resignation letter there, Helen. Let's talk about Wes Streeting, the former Health Secretary.
We talked about this earlier in the week on the pod. Wes Streeting had been preparing for a leadership bid for some time. He has been slightly caught this week, I think, by the fact that I imagine he was expecting that Keir Starmer would in fact respond to the pressure and perhaps resign. We have 94 people who are now on MPs who are now on the record saying that they don't think the Prime Minister should be Prime Minister anymore. It's fair to say in normal circumstances perhaps the Prime Minister might look at that and think, maybe my time is up and it's about making sure I can secure my legacy and think about what comes next and see if I can exit the stage in as graceful way as possible. That's not what Keir Starmer has chosen to do thus far. So he effectively, did he force Wes Streeting into a position where Wes Streeting had to resign? Was Wes Streeting going to resign anyway? We've had the massive inconvenience from a timing and politics perspective of having to have the King's speech in the middle of this week too, which everybody was rightly extremely nervous of putting the King in a difficult position and politicising that day. But it's made all of the kind of shenanigans even more convoluted and odd, I think. So Wes Streeting resigned from the cabinet. He is pretty brutal about a lack of vision from Keir Starmer. His team are telling everybody that he's absolutely got the number of MPs behind him that he could formally trigger a leadership contest should he want to. There is always this hesitation about who wants to be the person who actually puts up the fight. He's got as near to it as anybody so far. But Angela Rayner, as you just mentioned, Angela Rayner has said that she doesn't want to be the person who wields the knife. She's not ruled herself out for running if somebody else does, but Wes right now is very busy kind of preparing for that moment, but it's not come yet.
Let's do Andy Burnham, because I think he is this funny spectre over the whole thing. Just to remind people, he is the Mayor of Greater Manchester. He is currently not a Labour MP.
Andy has been looking for a seat. There's been rumours of Andy Burnham looking for a seat. We know he wanted to go for Gorton and Denton, which was the seat that was contested in the by-election in February. And this week, some surprising news, I think, for close watchers, that Josh Simons is the lucky guy who has decided to relinquish his seat as an MP in order that Andy Burnham can put himself forward to be selected. So the steps are the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party has to agree that Andy Burnham can be the candidate for this by-election. They have to agree the date of the by-election and all of that stuff. But there will be a question about what the NEC do about Andy Burnham. I think it's quite unlikely that they will from here want to get him to not stand. But the really interesting thing about the choice of seat that he's taken is this is not going to be an easy contest for Andy Burnham.
So, Helen, can I throw some stats at you? Because I think this is quite interesting. So Makerfield, which is within Greater Manchester, so within Andy Burnham's patch, was won by Labour in the 2024 general election with Josh Simons with 45% of the vote. Reform came second with 32% of the vote. Last week, in the local elections, Reform won the seat with 50% of the vote and Labour got 22%. But in the 2024 mayoral elections, where Andy Burnham got re-elected as Mayor of Greater Manchester, he won with 62% in Makerfield. So there's lots of chat at the moment. Professor John Curtis, another great friend of the pod, has said that there is only a 5% chance of Labour winning the seat with anyone but Andy Burnham. By-elections can be all about personalities, and it is going to be a kind of the personalities of Andy Burnham versus Nigel Farage. It's going to be fascinating to see how it really works out, because this has massive implications for future contests, let alone the 2029 general election.
No one can accuse Andy Burnham of shying away from the real fight here. Like, if he can win this seat, Reform have already said that they will effectively throw the kitchen sink at this, and you'd expect it. It is the fight. It's a proper battle of the two arguments. So I think you can expect the result to be even closer than the beautiful stats that you gave us might suggest. And it's by no means guaranteed that even Andy Burnham, with all of the goodwill and all of the regard he's held in the North, will in fact be able to make this argument. It's also a really tricky political argument for him, isn't it? Because they're basically saying Josh Simons, an MP they were pretty happy with, by all accounts, who was, doing a really good job. He's decided to step away. Andy's going to step in, and the whole reason for voting Labour is to get rid of Keir Starmer.
Yeah, it's going to be a weird situation.
That's an odd poster.
Reform and Labour can just have the same posters, which get Starmer out. Wes Streeting is a good communicator and he's pretty smart by all accounts. And if there's a criticism of Andy Burnham, lots of people say he's quite flexible with what his policies might be. He can chop and change, and it's hard to pin him down. And actually having a proper hustings where they're on the same stage and they're having a real battle of ideas or whatever they want to call it, could be actually quite strong for Wes Streeting.
You're right, it'll be an interesting kind of head-to-head, that Wes Streeting versus Andy Burnham. The other thing to say about Andy is that he's very famously an Everton fan. So I think his whole kind of just keeping on going back, not giving up, being very kind of dogged about, it doesn't matter that you didn't quite win that time, you're still going to carry on. That's very much in his kind of mindset. He's definitely a fighter, not a quitter, our Andy.
Well, interesting parallels with the current Prime Minister in that case, because, you said this already, 94 MPs now officially want him gone. He's still got the process on his side because he's neither resigned and the party haven't coalesced around a single candidate yet. And I think he's gone into what I would call tortoise mode, where he's sort of stuck his legs and arms in and his head in, and he's essentially just sitting tight, producing some pretty terrible grammatical problems in his letters in response to his resignations. But essentially, it's like his girlfriend's broken up with him, but he's got to kind of keep sleeping on her sofa for a bit until he can get a place of his own. Until there were cabinet resignations, we are in the kind of pre-Johnson Truss era where they couldn't fill cabinet vacancies quick enough. Whereas, lots of the cabinet are apparently saying to him he should set out a timetable to depart, but they're not willing to stake their jobs on it. So he may as well stay put. So people should keep in mind, he has said he would fight in a contest. He is still technically then a runner and rider, even though people are treating him as a bit of a lame duck.
And the Prime Minister's allies are very much out on the airwaves today and yesterday, and they've been banging the drum on he's not going anywhere, we shouldn't be doing this, there shouldn't be a contest at all. Unfortunately, they are making some arguments which are going to be very attractive to the Conservative opposition. I think sometimes they get so focused on their own arguments on their own side. So Steve Reid, who's the Housing Secretary, was out this morning talking about what a waste of money all of this was.
Just to explain, the waste of money is the expense of running another, not just by-election, but mayoral election too, because someone will have to replace Andy Burnham.
You don't have to be anywhere on this debate to think that there are more important things by miles for the people who are running our country to be focused on right now. So I don't think the distraction argument is a perfectly reasonable one to make. There'll be all sorts going on behind the scenes. I have the privilege of being able to talk to you, who's an actual veteran of what it feels like and what's actually going on in leadership elections when your party is in power. I feel slightly scared to ask you, on the grounds that it might be triggering, but as the children say, could you give us a bit of a flavour of what it feels like when your party is at war with itself and also in office?
Yeah, of course. So just a quick caveat, obviously I was part of Conservative leadership contests, so although I would say broadly the same, there are slight differences, not least they tend to move at pace, it turns out, compared to certainly how this Labour Party wants to go about it. I'm really interested in this numbers point because everyone was talking about it yesterday. Does Wes Streeting really have the numbers? And Number 10 was saying there's no way he could. And essentially journalists couldn't verify one way or the other. And everyone says the first rule of politics is knowing how to count. That is totally true. I would say a kind of rule 1B is that you also have to know how trustworthy the people are who say that they would be on your list. And there are lots and lots of people, perhaps not on the Labour side, but there were on the Conservative side, who are willing to basically say yes to everybody and try and leverage jobs. And they do basically get caught out in the end because as the contest continues, the different sides speak to each other and start doing little background deals and stuff like that. And essentially they can compare lists, and it's amazing how quite a lot of the same people are in there. Absolutely, yes, green category, they'll vote, I am the hill they will die on. So just some caution to the MPs who want to do a bit of playing around. Secondly, there is some of the just kind of practicalities and logistics, and you can't run a campaign from thin air. You need to have space. So, for the couple of campaigns I was involved on, we ended up being in basically a hotel room, and you'd be writing speeches and speaking to journalists and stuff with everyone kind of piled on a double bed. It was quite weird and quite smelly, just because you've got so many people packed inside with pizzas and stuff. So finding some office space, getting staff, peeling off special advisors who are currently obviously under contract to the government, and because there is no contest yet, don't quite know what to do, and they don't know what their bosses are going to do.
Cleo, can I just jump in on that point? Because I think that's one of the other reasons why to the outside it might just look totally odd that we are really genuinely at a stalemate. And it's worth remembering that anybody who is paid by the taxpayer to be a member of the government, so that's a minister, or anybody who's paid to be a special advisor who's part of the Labour Party, so, our SPAD friends, they cannot be using the time that the taxpayer is paying them for in order to support their own political party. So there's a sort of kind of absolute moratorium on people who are on the government payroll, and by that I mean cabinet ministers, junior ministers, parliamentary private secretaries, special advisors, on being either doing it in real life or being caught using the time in your day job to participate in anything to do with the leadership campaign. It's quite inappropriate. So that's another really odd dynamic that's going on here, is there's a whole set of people who are sort of theoretically the top of the party who are not, in fact, active participants. I mean, in their own time, they may well be doing all sorts of things, but there's a really funny dynamic that they've all got to manage in that too, and an environment where there's not a lot of trust between people. So if it's in your interest to cry foul and, report back to number 10 that actually this person who's supposed to be working, as the junior minister for whatever, he has been spending their time or has been seen doing this campaigning, that's really problematic. So it's a very odd situation where most of the people you'd expect to be who have most interest in it, most invested in it, will have to be the voters. Because the Prime Minister has refused to budge and he's pretending that everything's fine, there's nothing going on here, it's another kind of thing that's freezing everybody from being able to act at the moment.
So, a great thing to be doing just now, because you're going to have to think of ways to have these staff, and you're going to have transport costs, and you're going to have leaflet costs and all kinds of other things, is speaking to donors and buttering them up accordingly. And smart people will have been doing that for months anyway. And of course, newspaper editors, friendly journalists, you want people getting on side and doing glowing profiles of the kinds that everyone will remember, of, people at home in their kitchen with their wives, everything looking completely natural and not at all weird, like they're in a kitchen catalogue. The bits that I find quite interesting are the dirty dossiers and the debate prep. So the dirty dossiers, people probably have heard of this before, but in certainly general elections, the different party campaign headquarters will assemble dirt, essentially, on leaders and senior figures in the opposing parties. And you can run a kind of guerrilla campaign of getting things out about them. In leadership contests within a single party, it is so much worse, so much dirtier, because these people know each other and they've known each other a long time. Think of the WhatsApp group you would be most fearful about leaking, amongst your friendship group, then basically turning on you. I think the most damaging revelations about the Conservative Party in many ways have been during these leadership contests. And these guys will all have stuff on each other because they've known each other for such a long time. And I think particularly because they're the governing party, they should think very, very carefully about stuff they're prepared to use against each other to win. And so far, it's all been very friendly, very nice letters to each other, very nice warm words about each other in Twitter statements and so forth. But they have outriders, they have friends, and they have frenemies who are prepared to do all kinds of things to get the jobs they want. And the debate prep, just my final bit, because I love this element. So many of these people, these contenders, the public will not have heard their voices before, just because amazingly outside Westminster, the rest of the world is getting on with their lives and their jobs. So not only are they speaking to the different broadcasters, BBC, ITV and so forth, try and get debates that are most favourable to their terms, should they be able to speak first, or what kind of format do they want to happen, they'll also be getting the best people in the business in to prepare them to, pretend to be the different people standing at lecterns discussing, Rory Stewart style? Do you just kind of undress over the course of the debate and do you sit in a weird way on your stool? Or, what are the messages you want to hit? What are your best attack lines? What are your best ways of presenting yourself? How many times should you iterate what your father used to do as a living, for example? And I really love that bit because it's also kind of the most old school and in many ways the most interesting. And there is actually opportunity to kind of show some of the best of your party and, of course, the worst.
I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? It's that don't forget that other people are watching. So your note of caution that this isn't just about an internal fight in the Labour Party. It's you are absolutely equipping, probably for a long time into the future, your opponent political parties with all manner of things that they will throw back at you. It's hard not to, I do, who doesn't love a debate, and I hear all of that, but you can also hear this just can also, if it drags on for ages, it does look and sound and feel quite self-indulgent for politicians. I think the Keir Starmer camp is making that argument very strongly, that this is an appalling waste of time, need to get on with governing, everyone should back the Prime Minister. I
mean, people will remember how long the leadership contest was for the Rishi Sunak versus Liz Truss. It went all summer. It was something crazy, like 12 weeks, I think. By the end, we knew far too much about both of them. We kind of lost interest in the whole thing. And you're right, the opposition parties had lots of lovely things to be able to throw back at them. And that is already happening now. I mean, the Conservative Party is, if you look at their CCHQ press accounts and so on, they're having a lovely time digging up old tweets that Andy Burnham or Wes Streeting or Keir Starmer was saying about the then Conservative government, about this is a shambles, we need a general election now. And it's really good news for Reform and the Greens because they don't have any of this track record, even though they've got lots of crazy infighting of their own, lots of crazy stories about them this week to do with Zach Polanski and Nigel Farage's financial affairs. They've kind of just been able to go under the radar for the whole thing because, the government is just in chaos.
The important point about the leadership contest for this Labour Party is it's not just about swapping in and out leaders. There are some really, really big arguments that the Labour Party needs to have within itself about where it's going to be. The fact that they're having to do that while they're in office and while they're governing at the same time and while they're deciding who's the right person at the top. I was about to stop myself saying who's the right guy at the top, but it probably will be a man, let's face it. It makes all of this... makes all this even more complicated. And as I said at the top, there is definitely the Keir Starmer camp are pushing very hard the narrative that one of the reasons there can't be a leadership contest is because it's not possible to govern and there's loads of things you can't do while a leadership contest is going on. Now, that's not actually technically true. So we have some precedents of how government can carry on. The big mandate is people vote for a government run by a political party. It's not a presidential system, it's a political party system that we have in our country. And it's about who can command the confidence of the House of Commons and who's got the most MPs. So this isn't a black and white issue. This is not like a general election where you have to say to the party that's in power, I'm really sorry, but for a short period of time, we're not going to let you are going to accept that you can't take any decisions because you'd be wasting a massive amount of public money if 2 days before a general election you decide to announce a train line or whatever. So there are some proper restrictions for a general election period while the country has to decide. It's much more pick and mix, matter of judgment, case by case basis decisions about what happens when it's the leadership of a political party that's up for grabs.
Just putting the actual contest to one side, the idea of the government not getting on with what it should do and this all being very self-indulgent, that's what's happening right now. This is without a contest. There's this brilliant MP in Northern Ireland called, I think it's Saoirse Eastwood. Anyway, she says, I'm one backbench MP. As a direct result of this leadership shambles, I've had at least one and potentially two ministerial meetings cancelled due to resignations. And now I'm having to pull out of a conference on cancer next week due to potential votes on Starmer. And I'm just one backbench MP. Can you imagine the impact of all this across government? And I think she has a really good point. Aside from what an actual contest looks like, in the meantime, everything just feels, we had the King's speech on Wednesday. I don't particularly feel like we're dynamic and skittering along to make big changes in people's lives. We're still essentially frozen in time. Ultimately, the constituency that is going to decide the future of the country is members of the Labour Party. It's not voters in general. Will they make the best choices in the interest of the country? Obviously, that's their prerogative. But, you know, this is how we have ended up with some other leaders previously. I'd probably put Liz Truss up there as quite a good example, where wings within wings of political parties that have been able to organise themselves really well can make decisions that impact the country at large. And it's like the constituency ends up being sort of 5% of the actual country deciding the future direction.
You can see the Prime Minister's supporters out there saying, you know, this should stop. It's not going to go away. There's no way of putting this genie back in the box. You've got nearly 100 MPs who are prepared to be in public saying that they don't back their own leader. That's a large number of people. You've got 3, if not 4, big name candidates out there. This will be consuming so much energy and time of the senior leadership of the Labour Party, of everybody who's working in government at the moment. The sooner it can be brought to a sensible end, the better. But I don't think, to use your tortoise analogy, that the answer to that is going to be just pretending you can somehow get away without even putting the question or sticking your head or your little feet out of somewhere, because we're in this now. We're in it now. So please use it as a chance to agree amongst yourselves what you're doing, agree a mandate for yourselves, agree a kind of plan for governing and for government. This is not going to be a good time to have a government that is entirely inwardly focused on itself and having an argument that to most of us is like belongs in a student common room from, 20 years. Sometimes it literally is the same argument they were having in a student common room 30 years ago. So, could you just get on with it? Whatever it is, please get on with it.
Keir Starmer's allies have said that this has been a terrible week. I mean, I think that's a bit of an understatement. I'm sure they're looking forward to some nice, peaceful times ahead, but I don't think next week is going to be any better, because the rumour is that the next tranche, the final tranche of the Mandelson files, i.e. the kind of full adherence to the humble address, will be dropping next week. And this is actually a kind of black hole, because not only, obviously, is Mandelson back on the agenda for the Prime Minister, but apparently this one will feature the WhatsApps of different cabinet members and potentially senior MPs. And there are more kind of opportunities for people to be suckered into this Mandelson hellhole. We hope we've given you some context for the weekend and for the weeks to come. And we'll see you on Tuesday for what on earth is going to happen next.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Remember to follow the show on your podcast player and leave us a 5-star review if you enjoyed it.
And please do email us with feedback and questions. Our email address is intheroom@independent.co.uk. And if you're listening on Spotify, you can also leave us comments underneath, which we love reading too. And you can keep up to date with all the best bits of the pod on Instagram @intheroom.pod.
This podcast is part of the Independent Podcast Network and is produced in association with Next Chapter Studios.
The executive producers are Carrie Rose and Olivia Foster, and the producer is Sam Durham.
And a special mention to content editor Maya Anushka and video editor Vali Raza.